Thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Samantha Blake and I'm the program manager for the Women Legislators Lobby. And I'll pass it over to Jennifer to introduce herself.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you everyone for being with us today. I'm Jennifer Blimmer and I'm the director of Women Legislators Lobby, a program of Women's Action for New Directions. If this is your first time with us, welcome. If this is your second, third, fourth, 10th time with us, welcome back. We're happy to have you. For those of you joining us for the first time, I just want to do a brief overview of WAND and WILL. Women's Action for New Directions is a nonprofit organization that works to build women's political power while advocating for security and peace through justice. We focus on centering women's voices in the conversation about national security and defense. Women Legislators Lobby is a national, nonpartisan network of women state legislators that work together to influence the federal budget and budget priorities. As the WILL team, we are dedicated to providing training to women state legislators that help them become more effective in their legislatures, which is why we've been doing a series of webinars this summer while we've been inside due to COVID. The next slide. Just some housekeeping issues. If you have any questions, please drop them in the Q&A or in the chat or raise your hand. Webinar recordings will be available to our dues paying members, so please be on the lookout for an email on how you can become a dues paid member of WILL. Once you become a member, you'll have access to the webinars and other resources and materials that we've curated for our members in our membership portal. Thank you for joining us today on this webinar on speech writing with our featured speaker, Chris Huntley. I've seen the presentation, it's amazing, and I'm super excited to have him on with us today.
Thank you, Jennifer. All right, so I think I'm just gonna go ahead and share my screen. Am I good to go?
Yeah, go ahead. You're
okay, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, go for it.
You're still sharing, yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry.
It's okay.
One moment.
No worries, take your time.
There we go.
All right, let's get this started. Okay. Sorry about that. I'm just getting this into share mode. But while I'm doing this, I just wanted to thank Jennifer and Samantha so much for inviting me to be here with you all today. It's really, you know, speech writing, storytelling, what have you, is a passion of mine, coming up from a very young age as a preacher's kid. A PK is what we would call ourselves. I very quickly learned the power of speeches and writing and just the incredible responsibility a leader has to speak to the hearts and the minds of people. And I've kind of just taken that in throughout my career, and you know, opportunities have come and doors have opened. So I'm just grateful, and I always want to thank those who allow me to, you know, share a little bit of my story. So I'll just get right into it. You know, political speeches are necessary, right? Any leader is called on to speak. I don't care whether you are a member of the city council, school board, an elected member of Congress. There are things that you can get around. If there's a global pandemic, you may not have to actually do votes. You know, you may not have to do specific calls time. But as a leader, you will always be called on to speak, no matter what. And that, you know, the venues where you'll be asked to deliver remarks, they vary. Floor speeches, conferences, keynotes, commemorative events. What's been very interesting now in the age of COVID, right, is that now most speakers are having to do what we're doing right now, do this virtual kind of interaction. So longer form speeches are now having kind of a dip, right, where even if you look at the, for instance, the Democratic National Convention or the Republican National Convention, everything was condensed, right, because of the day and time that we're living in. But even in those condensed instances, even in those condensed times, there's a formula, I would say, to how you not only develop, but research and kind of win the moment and meet the moment with your delivery. And I'm gonna take the next few moments to walk through that, and then we can just talk about how you can apply that to your everyday lives as leaders. So you're gonna be speaking, you're a leader, you have to speak. But if you are going to be a good public speaker, right, you have to be memorable. And listen, we've all been there in the churches or the legislatures where someone just drones on and on and on and doesn't really get there. If you want to be a memorable public speaker, there are a couple of things that you have to do, right? You've got to be persuasive. Talk about problems and solutions. Don't just, don't let it be uneven. Don't just talk all about the problem and don't have a solution. Don't just talk about the solution and not actually address the problem. Be a beat. Unless it's a solemn occasion like a eulogy or something that's super commemorative, people want to see energy. People want to see that someone's alive. Be alive. Be understandable. Speak to the hearts and the minds that you're trying to move, right? So don't speak above the crowd. Don't speak below the audience, right? I think a lot of times there's a tendency for public speakers to want to be prolific and pontificate and have all these great, words and phrases and clauses. Keep it simple. You want to be able to speak to the hearts. You want people to be able to go back and tell the story of what you are saying or the moral of your message or your speech. Be quotable. Think about how you elevate the remarks that you're giving, right? Think about if there was we live in, digital age, right? Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, everything is bite-sized. So if you could condense after you get done, no matter how long your remarks are, you should be able to condense them down to write about 300 words, right? One or two sentences that speak directly to what it is that you are trying to say. And then if you're really good at it, you'll be able to get a tweet because you want to be able to share, make it tweetable. 240 characters, 380 now, but be quotable. And then this is something that I think most people struggle with, thinking that every single time they speak has to be vastly original. You have to reinvent the wheel every single time. You don't have to do that. Most times the people that you're speaking to have never heard you speak before, and they never heard what you were saying. So as long as you are persuasive, upbeat, understandable, and quotable, you can get some more bang for your buck. So let's talk about some of the ways we do this. Before you even sit down to draft, before you even get to thinking about what it is you want to say, you got to understand the audience. And so what does that look like? It varies, right? But I think there are some crucial questions that you need to ask before you're speaking. I don't care if you're speaking for 2 minutes or you're speaking for an hour. You need to know who you're talking to. So who are you speaking to? Is it a predominantly male audience? Is it women? Is it progressive? Is it Democrat? Is it Republican? Is it conservative? Who's going to be hearing the words that you are crafting or you and your team are crafting? What do they need? Why are they there? Is it a supportive event for a cause they care about? Are folks excited to be there? Are folks there because they're upset? Are folks there because they're sad? Are they doing party business? Are they doing, is it a budget? Right? Understand what are they coming in there for? Right? Is there a theme? This is a trick that, not even a trick, but I think that most times people just accept a speaking engagement and just go to writing and find out what the theme is. You will better connect with the audience, right? Who is there for a specific reason and a specific theme. If you do some things that connect with them, talk about, they're called how the hells, it's an old or speechwriting terminology called a how the hell. Means how the hell do they know that, right? Like, Joe Biden is here talking to union workers about manufacturing jobs, but he knows this person's name and their story. How the hell do they know that? Staffing work, right? So think through what your the audience, and think through the theme that is undergirding the event, and that'll help you get a good start on finding the meeting the moment for what you've been asked to do. What characteristics make your audience unique? There is a uniqueness in every single audience. I don't care, even if it's an event that happens over and over and over again, the people that are there are alive, and their lives have changed since the last time they've been there. So never think that it's going to be something that's cookie cutter that works. You have to tailor your message to the audience, but you can't do that without understanding it. And I'll have a one pager that I'll share with Jennifer that can be shared with these questions to think through them. So after you think about the audience and you do your research, you talk to staff, you talk to communications directors. I will always recommend, if you are going to speak somewhere or do something for an organization, talk to the comms director. They know what kind of message they're going for. They know what's going to win the room. They'll be helpful. Shout out to comms directors. They're super helpful. So after you know the audience, then you can get to drafting. And so what I'm going to do is, there's so many different ways you can write a speech, right? There are different formulas, different outlines, there's problem solution, there's different ways to build a case, there's different ways to tear it down, but I think that for legislators, leaders, public officials who find themselves often in a bind when, drafting remarks, there are two formulas that I found that work, that can, they work super fast. And also it is something that you can do in a short amount of time. Sometimes, whether I was working on the Hill for Congresswoman Barbara Lee or Senator Harry Reid, or even Senator Warren on the presidential, sometimes I would get less than 2 hours notice. Hey, we need to give remarks here for this press conference. Hey, we need to turn around, a speech in a week that is like the theory of the entire case of the campaign. Okay, where do you start? You want to start with an outline. And I always, everyone should have their own process, but the reason I say that the outline is your friend, because it allows you to see the full picture that you're painting, right? You want to step back. You don't want to, because if you just freeform write, sometimes you can do some really great things freeform writing, but after you freeform write, clear it out and do some bullets, do some outlines, because it'll help you. So the first technique is called Monroe's motivated sequence, and it is an old rhetorical device that allows you to craft a speech. So there are 5 segments to this type of speech: attention, need, satisfaction, visualization, and then action. So I'll just walk through them, and then I'll show you what that could look like in a speech, and then I'll show you what the outline looks like as well. But first, let me just walk through the pieces. Attention, again, audience, right? Audiences they're fickle, and sometimes people are there, sometimes they don't want to be there, sometimes people are experts and they're judgy. So you need to say something to get their attention. Say something memorable to get their attention. Show them that, right, you get it, and you understand that the beginning of the speech is what matters. And then you get to the need. Show that there's a need for change, show that there's a problem. Show that there is a problem that needs fixing. That's why you're there. You're talking about a problem, or you're talking about a situation, or you're talking about, some kind of change you want to make. And then go to satisfaction. Satisfaction is obviously the solution. This is where you provide the answer to the problem you just described. But you don't want to just describe it. You want to describe it and then visualize it for people. You want people to be able to see themselves in the solution that you have put forward. And then finally, you want to drive people to take a call to action. Do something. Get up off your bum and do something. So let's look at what that could look like. Here's an outline, right, that gets attention. And we'll take the death of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, the uprisings, and the racial reckoning that's been happening across the country, just because it's relevant and it's something that everyone is having to talk about right now. And if you're not talking about it, you should be. So attention, right? George Floyd should still be alive today. Wow, that's a statement right there. He should be. We watched him be killed in, cold blood. George Floyd should still be alive today. Need, here's a problem. The racist violence that killed him, it's not new. And it's not new. We saw this summer, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, right? That's the problem. So what's the solution? We have to make change in this country. Oh, right? Okay, that's cool. We can do solution, but what kind of solution is that? What kind of change do we want to make? Well, we need to ask ourselves what we are doing proactively every day to dismantle systemic racism, right? And then the action, right, is for us all to come together. My prayer is that this atrocity can lead to greater understanding and ultimately the grace we all need to ensure justice for all. Giving a little grace, giving a little space. So here's what that looks like. Longer form. Without the outline. So essentially that. So it's a short little tiny little speech. I mean, this is derived, and I guess I can add this link to the one pager. This is derived from Elizabeth Warren gave a direct-to-camera remarks response to the unrest in Minnesota earlier this summer, And when I wrote it, I didn't really think that it was going to go as viral as it did, just because everyone was responding at that time. But it really did, and I can send a link there. There's a longer speech to it, but these are the key elements that match with attention, need, satisfaction, visualization, and action. So that's Monroe's motivated sequence. And I love Monroe's, and I'm always trying to find new ways to, develop it and move it. But there is another method that I've recently found in the last couple of years that it's even faster than Monroe's. And that is the Lancaster formula. So Simon Lancaster is a speechwriter from across the pond, United Kingdom. He's written for prime ministers, magistrates, all kinds of folks. And he really has, that's been up there for a while. He really has a keen understanding of how to win the mind, right, through rhetoric. So he recommends that you begin kind of similar to Monroe's motivated sequence. He recommends that you begin with something that's breathless, short, jagged sentences. And then after the short, jagged sentences, you want to take your subject and show emotion about it. This is what you would call a litany. You want to talk about the subject that you're doing in 3 pieces of rhetoric. And then balance the ideas. It's kind of like visualization. The ideas are rational and not bonkers. So basically show folks that, hey, the change or the solution to the problem that I'm talking about, it's not that outlandish. We can do it together. Metaphor, back to visualization. Plant a seed of an idea. Give someone the ability to make the idea tangible to them. Make whatever it is you're trying to convey tangible. And then exaggeration. Go on out with a bang. Sweep people off their feet. That's kind of reverse from Monroe's, but it seems really funny, but look how it works. And you can do this from anything from political speeches to talking about your favorite pair of jeans. Breathlessness, flooding in London, droughts in Africa, fires in California, repetition. Yet still there's some people saying no such thing as climate change. Yet still people are discrediting science. Yet still business as usual, right? Then go to balance. Climate change is not a distant threat, right? Metaphor. We can't bury our heads in the sand. We can't afford to take any more time wasting on climate. And then end with exaggeration. This is the biggest threat facing humanity. If we don't fight it, no one will. Never a better time to take action on climate. That's what it would look like. So, these are two of the go-tos for me. Everyone has their own method. Everyone has their own writing process. But when I'm in a pinch, I'm in a bind, and I need to write quickly and effectively to sum up a case, it's either Monroe's or the Lancaster method for me. But after you write it, right, you gotta edit. The amount of times I've talked to people and, talked to them about public speaking experiences that went wrong, and they say, oh, I just wrote the thing and then went up there. You didn't edit it. You didn't sit down with it. You didn't read it backwards. You didn't familiarize yourself with it. Edit it and just, go through grammatically, yes, but then just see how it feels. What's the flow? Take it off the paper, put it on the screen, take it on the screen, write it on paper. Get familiarized with it, and it will come alive to you. When you just write something off the cuff and then you just go straight with it, you haven't given it any time. So I cannot emphasize editing enough. And look, you can edit yourself, but it's always best if you have a staff member or someone else that you can bounce off some of these ideas with. Let someone else see what you're writing. Just because something that may seem so clear to you may not actually, to the point about speaking to the hearts that you want to move and not speaking above or below the audience, you might think this is a prolific metaphor. It just might be confusing. So please edit. And after you edit, you have to practice. You've got to practice. I don't care if it's 3-5 minutes. I don't care if you just run through it once. Say it out loud. Let the speech come alive to you. Because again, cold delivery, just like a speech that is not edited, it's not alive in you. It's not, you don't know the ebbs and flows of it, but you also don't know the really good parts of it. You don't understand when to pause and to wait for the words to fall on someone's heart or their mind. So when you're practicing and you're delivering it, I have 3 recommendations. Record yourself. Everyone has a smartphone or some kind of device. Do it, record yourself. hear what you sound like. And it's not narcissistic. You just want to hear the flow. So record yourself, time yourself, know how long you're going. Because sometimes in the recording and the timing, you'll be speaking so fast, and you have to give 15 minutes of remarks, but you did it in 5 and nobody understood you. So record yourself, time yourself, and then play it back. And there is a function on Microsoft Word called voice command. And I usually do this after, I've done my first draft, outline draft, edit it, and before I send it out to anyone, I'll sit back and I'll hit voice command in Word and I'll just listen to it. And there are 3 voices. So one's like Bob, the other's Samantha, and one's Victoria. I like Samantha for whatever reason. I don't know. She sounds British. So I listened to it, and I can't tell you the amount of times I have stopped and reordered or rerouted the contents of a speech based on just that listening process. So I can't emphasize that enough. And then the last thing I wanted to kind of reinforce was that, yes, talking about problems, talking about solutions is super important. And a lot of times you have to get technical if you're trying to fight for an amendment to a budget or an amendment to a bill, or you're at a council meeting and you're making a motion, or you're a member of Congress and you are introducing a bill that's very, very technical. Detail matters, and it is important for folks to know that you know what you're talking about. But if you're going to do it in a way that is going to live on, tell a story. Talk about how that issue impacts someone's life. Talk about make it real, because stories live forever. And so when you're talking about stories, you want to tell a story that's believable. Don't get up there and just flat out lie. Like, no, okay, you did not, right? Like, just make sure your story is believable. Let it be emotional. We're all human. Connect to people. Speak to the hearts you're trying to move. Let it be symbolic. Let it have some kind of symbolism to it. Let it, have a larger meaning that can be applied to some other area of someone's life. And then let it be illustrative. So I think that one of the best ways to illustrate something is to tell a story about your family. And so I'm going to end with one of the most recent speeches that I wrote for Senator Warren for the Democratic Convention, where there was a lot going on. 2-3 weeks, leading up to the convention. She was still being vetted. So we knew that there was a speaking role, but we didn't know what the speaking role was going to be. So had to have it in pocket. And I was on the convention writing team, but I was also, working with Senator Warren. We had a choice to make. Do we get up there? Do we, once we knew that she wasn't selected, our time was set. We were going to go to a specific location. What do we do? Well, if we're going to win the moment, I think we need to tell a story, right? They wanted us to the convention and the campaign wanted us to talk about the economy and reopening and how it was impacting people's lives, and how the rigged, well, if you don't know, Elizabeth Warren's brand is, the system has been rigged. The wealthy and the well-connected have, leveraged corruption in Washington to take opportunity away from working people. And so that's kind of like progressive firebrand for her. So they wanted her to do that, which is fine. We can do that, but we can do it and we can tell a compelling story. So I don't know if you had a chance to watch it, but I wanted to give a couple minutes to show how using a story can talk in detail, but also at the same time, it can be moving. So.
I did it. Well, I made $1 million in my business this year, all from one online course.
Sorry about that.
Tonight, we've heard from the people who make America work, people who put their lives on the line to keep our country going. And since COVID-19 hit, they've taken one gut punch after another. And what has the COVID fallout done to our babies? Well, I'm here at the Early Childhood Education Center in Springfield, Massachusetts, which has been closed for months. Childcare was already hard to find before the pandemic, and now parents are stuck. No idea when schools can safely reopen, and even fewer childcare options. The devastation is enormous. And the way I see it, big problems demand big solutions. Now, I love a good plan, and Joe Biden has some really good plans. Plans to bring back union jobs in manufacturing and create new union jobs in clean energy. Plans to increase Social Security benefits, cancel billions in student loan debt, and make our bankruptcy laws work for families instead of the creditors who cheat them. These plans reflect a central truth. Our economic system has been rigged to give bailouts to billionaires and kick dirt in the face of everyone else. But we can build a thriving economy by investing in families and fixing what's broken. Joe's plan to build back better includes making the wealthy pay their fair share, holding corporations accountable, repairing racial inequities, and fighting corruption in Washington. Let me tell you about one of Joe's plans that's especially close to my heart: childcare. As a little girl growing up in Oklahoma, what I wanted most in the world was to be a teacher. I loved teaching. And when I had babies and was juggling my first big teaching job down in Texas, it was hard, but I could do hard. The thing that almost sank me: childcare. One night, my Aunt B called just to check in, and I thought I was fine. But then I just broke down and started to cry. I had tried holding it all together, but without reliable childcare, working was nearly impossible. And when I told Aunt B I was going to quit my job, I thought my heart would break. And then she said the words that changed my life: I can't get there tomorrow, but I'll come on Thursday. And she arrived with 7 suitcases and a Pekingese named Buddy and stayed for 16 years. I get to be here tonight because of my Aunt B. I learned a fundamental truth: nobody makes it on their own. And yet, here we are, 2 generations of working parents later. And if you have a baby and don't have an Aunt B, you're on your own. And here's why that is wrong. We build infrastructure like roads and bridges and communication systems so that people can work. That infrastructure helps us all because it keeps our economy going. It's time to recognize that childcare is part of the basic infrastructure of this nation. It's infrastructure for families. Joe and Kamala will make high-quality childcare affordable for every family, make preschool universal, and raise the wages of every childcare worker. Now, that's just one plan, but it gives you an idea of how we get this country working for everyone. Donald Trump's ignorance and incompetence have always been a danger to our country. COVID-19 was Trump's biggest test. He failed miserably. Today, America has the most COVID deaths in the world and an economic collapse. And both crises are falling hardest on Black and brown families. Millions out of work, millions more trapped in cycles of poverty, millions on the brink of losing their homes, millions of restaurants and stores hanging by a thread. This crisis is bad, and it didn't have to be this way. This crisis is on Donald Trump and the Republicans who enable him. On November 3rd, we will hold them all accountable. So, whether you're planning to vote wearing a mask or vote by mail, please take out your phone right now and text VOTE to 30330. We all need to be in the fight to get Joe and Kamala elected. And after November, we all need to stay in the fight to get big things done. We stay in this fight so that when our children and our grandchildren ask what we did during this dark chapter in our nation's history, we will be able to look them squarely in the eye and say, we organized, we persisted, and we changed America.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out BBC News.
That was, 5 minutes, 30 seconds. You might recognize the Monroe's motivated. It was I kind of just like smushed them together. But it just shows the Aunt B story is so powerful because it does a couple of things, right? It talks about childcare and how it is infrastructure for families, and without it, you can, you won't be able to advance and be able to work. But then it also tells and we did this on the campaign trail a little more. We didn't have enough time to do it here, but for me, it told a story about privilege, right? And there in a couple of the way she delivered this story on the campaign trail, where it's like, Black and brown mamas, they don't always have an auntie, right? Obviously, community, obviously raising together, but a aunt that can fly across the country and stay, that's not always a luxury that is afforded to particularly Black and brown communities. So that story just told a fundamental truth. And that's what you can do. You can take a story that is personal, it's believable, it's emotional, and use some symbolism to make it relatable to basically anyone. So I mean, look, that is those are some of the tricks of the road that I've learned along the way, and I hope that was helpful. I have a one pager with some resources, including links to what I call the Political Speechwriter's Bible. It's the companion. This is like any speech you could ever give, any type of speech you want to see. It's probably outlined in this book. Monroe's motivated sequences in here. Excuse me. It's just in a pinch and a buy, in the keynote, the stump speech, right, which is super important for public speakers. The floor speech, eulogies. Oh, it's all in here, and you'll get that the link to how to get this. And then Simon Lancaster's book, I only have it on my iPad, called Winning Minds, the Language of Leadership. Invaluable resources. So with that, I'm gonna just stop talking and I guess open up for some questions to folks on the call.
And if you've been putting questions in the chat, Sam should be able to pull some of them up. If not, feel free to raise your hand and we'll just select you. Before we do that, Chris, I just want to thank you for your presentation. I don't know if you were able to see the comments, but a lot of people did like that speech that you wrote for Elizabeth. And so we're really happy that we were able to have you with us today.
Great, I'm glad to be here. I'm glad folks enjoyed it. Stories stick.
Okay. Sam, if you want to just kind of read the questions there. Okay.
Totally, yeah. So we have one question. It says, how did you get the Aunt B story? Did you sit down and interview her? How did that come to light?
So, so actually in A Fighting Chance, or This Fight Is Our Fight, no, A Fighting Chance, one of her books, she wrote about it. And it was one of the stories when I started working for her in 2018, in like the spring of 2018, before the presidential, because I felt like she was going to do it. And I just wanted to be a part of it. And so in doing the research on who she was, what she's done, I read the books, and I remember what I did do was I started to take out what I call a story matrix, right, or a story bank. I would go through her books and like the most compelling stories that she would tell that just really pricked me. I would just take them out, put them in a doc, and try to figure out how to add them to other pieces. It's funny because when we were interviewing, when I was interviewing with her and I was trying to get the job, I just flat out said, I said, Senator, you are prolific. You are one of the most accomplished academic, political minds. You have a team that everyone's Harvard, Oxford. People are smart, white papers. I am a Black boy from Albany, New York, whose family and father is a preacher. I'm a storyteller. So if you want to move hearts and minds, I'm your guy. I'm a storyteller. That's who I am. I'm going to walk into the room always thinking about how to tell a story. And she's like, that's exactly what I want to do. I think that's the missing piece. And that's what I always have tried to do for her, is to tell a story. Because it doesn't matter if what you're saying is, correct. It matters if it's correct. Don't get me wrong. But you can be correct and you can be high-minded, or are you gonna bring it down to a level where people can understand? So stories do that for me. So I just kind of took every single story that I felt was compelling, and I put it in the doc. And then when she decided to run, I had a whole trove of them for any situation.
Great. And we have another question. How long should rally speeches be in order to be effective?
Oh God, rallies. Do you remember those? I miss them. I mean, I don't think you need to be speaking unless the 5 to 7 minutes max. I mean, you know, a rally speech should. It depends, right? So let's say you're going to. It's so crazy that we don't do any of this anymore. But like you're going to a big conference like a Netroots, right? It's kind of a mixture of a rally. And if you don't know what Netroots is, it's like the progressive clearinghouse of Democrats from across the country get together. And so if you're going to an outdoor event that's, you know, people are riled up and they're ready to go, you want the longest you want to be up there is 10 minutes, because after that, people are really not listening anymore. And if you're going to do a rally speech with cascading litanies and a call and response and call to action, you're going to drive people to yes, we can, or forward, or 2 cents like we did for the wealth tax. Man, what a wonky campaign. You want to do it bite size so people remember.
And Barbara Ballard has her hand raised. Ooh, all right, sorry. Barbara Ballard has her hand raised. So Barbara, 1 second. You can have your mic on. You should be able to unmute to ask.
Thank you very much. My question would be, especially with your Monroe sequence, how do you adjust this when you are on Zoom? Because, you know, when we looked at Elizabeth Warren, you know, she was expressive and everything else, but on Zoom, especially if you're sitting and you're not standing and you can't do it, how would you adjust some of these things you talked about?
So I think it's a great question. I think that everything should be shorter now because we're on Zoom. Nobody wants to sit and look at anyone talk for I mean, I really didn't want to do the long 30 minutes, but it just turned out that way. Nobody wants to see you drawing on direct to camera. So shorten it, but I think you can still basically teleprompt yourself. There are ways that you can do it. You can have, so right now on your laptop or your computer, you can have up Zoom and you can have another screen, you know, like you can pull up a Google Doc and you can scroll, you know, my hand's up here and you can scroll down and you can read it as you go. You can prompt yourself there, or you can, you know, take a piece of paper, put it here, make it into, you know, an outline where it's not a manuscript, right? Another reason to edit and go over it and familiarize yourself with it, make it into notes, and all you have to do is glance down, you know? But that's what I would do. I hope that's helpful. But it is tricky to do it on Zoom, but you can I would recommend kind of trying to teleprompt off your screen and just looking directly at the camera, like we're doing right now.
Another question, how do you determine if stories are too raw or too sensitive to share?
I think you just have to have, you know, a gut reaction to whether or not it is something that you would want to sit. Do you want this plastered on the front page of the Washington Post? Do you want this plastered on the front page of the New York Times? Is that story, is it going to tell you in the greatest light? Now there are some times where you need the detail, right? You need one of my favorite speeches, oddly enough, we're not politically aligned, but just the framing of it, is Colin Powell's speech to United Nations. I mean, he drove them into a tizzy. It was nuts, and everybody went to war. But it was the vivid detail. If you go back and look at that speech, he used so many descriptive details that in some ways were kind of crass, but they also kind of told the story. There was I forget who it was. When I was on the Hill, I don't know if you remember the Syrian refugee boy who was on the front page of the New York Times. There was a senator that just described that photo, right? No one wants to think about a dead baby, but we had to think about the dead babies. So I think it's a you know, a gut check that you have to have, but you should also, you know, bounce your ideas off of someone. I don't care. We all have blind spots. You know what I'm saying? If you're gonna, you know, just double check it with someone, because 9 times out of 10 they'll give you some advice about whether. But and honestly, if you're asking yourself if it's too crass, probably is.
Next question. Do you have any recommendations for teleprompter apps?
No, I can find some and share in the one pager. I honestly use right now for on Zooms like EW, Senator Warren does. We just put it up on Google Drive and scroll it. But like actual teleprompter apps, I can get you the ones that we use on the presidential. We always had teleprompter operators, which was great. I love the teleprompter. It's amazing. I miss being around teleprompters. They just, you know, they make everything just flow so much better, especially when you have someone who can deliver like GW can.
Another question. Is it a good idea for us as legislators to have story banks, some of our own stories, so we have them ready to go, tied to various issues?
Yeah, I think so, right? And this is the thing. They can be your stories. They definitely should be your story, right? You part of the campaign. I mean, the underpinnings of a good campaign tell the bio of the principal, right? So you got to where you are off of not only the need for the people, but from your story. So don't forget that. It drives me nuts sometimes when people, I'm like, you had all these great, amazing pieces of your bio that made you relatable to folks so much so that they voted for you. And then you get in public office and then you just lose that person. Bring it in everywhere. But then also tell the stories of the people. One of the things I loved the most about the campaign was the selfie line that we did. It was nuts. I mean, every single time Elizabeth had an event, whether it was a speech or it was a organizing event, she would stay and do selfies with everyone. And at first, I was just like, oh God, what is this? But then I started to, I got it. She was connecting with people. But then I was like, whoa, this would be for my story bank. So I would take the digital team with me. And I would go out into the crowd. And actually, it turned into a little thing like man on the street thing. Nobody really knew. Like, they were like, oh, this guy from the campaign. Nobody's thinking young black boy from Albany is Elizabeth Warren's speechwriter. So I'm like, so what do you think about her remarks? Or like talking to people and just getting stories of their lives and why what she was saying meant something to them. And then there were a couple of times, I remember we went down to, we were in Mississippi Delta, and it was childcare again. We were talking to young mother about childcare, and I put her in a speech for National Action Network because the story was so compelling. So yeah, tell your stories, catalog your stories, but there's stories all around you. The people that you serve, the people that are around you, your staff. Just be open to, you know, cataloging things because stories help to help people understand things, and it sticks.
All right, next question has two parts. Where do you get stories? I guess you just kind of answered this actually. Where do you get stories that are about real life people? And how do you determine if something is quotable?
Stories about real life people. I mean, the newspaper, social media, you know, sometimes I watch movies and I'm like, oh, that'll be good, you know. I'm not saying make things up. I'm saying the human experience is all relative. So you can find in a lot of the Shakespearean structure of movies and series, they're retelling the stories of like historical figures and things like that. So look back there. But yeah, like the newspaper, local news will give you some stories because you'll have, you know, let's say there's some, you know, a broadband issue that they're doing, rural lack of broadband, right? They'll go and they'll talk to families and you get someone's name and they'll tell you why, you know, it's helping or hurting them to not have that, or reopening schools. They're journalists, you know, local affiliates going to talk to parents all across the country, and they're telling the stories about the anxieties they have about going back to school. So yeah, those would be my recommendations. And how do I determine if it's quotable? Well, Well, if it stands out, if you see it and it gives you that prick in your heart, or you remember it, or it's catchy, or it's buzzy, easily understood, if it is the heart of the issue, right? If it if it is if it is a phrase that you can see people naturally saying, and it makes you turn your head, like, oh wow, that actually makes sense. Those are the ways I determine things to be quotable. It's a feeling. It's a feeling.
Right. Another question. How do you balance preparing remarks ahead of time and speaking off the cuff based on the room? She said, I find when I write things out, I lose my spot and sound rehearsed. It's better speaking off the cuff, but then I forget certain points I want to make.
No, that makes a lot of sense. But that's where I think that an outline is the most helpful, right? Because you don't want, if you're not a manuscript, if you don't want to deliver your speech from manuscript written out, then, write it out as you do, but then go back like you saw in the presentation, right? And then make it into an outline, right? What is the, do the attention, do the need, do the satisfaction, the visualization, the action, and write 1 or 2 sentences below them, or just bullet points, right beneath them, so that when you, and then when you rehearse it and you do it that way, you can, you'll be able to go off the paper and it will be extemporaneous, but you won't forget.
All right, I think that's all of the questions we have in the chat and the Q&A, and I don't see any hands up.
Cool.
Let me just double check one more time. If anyone has any other questions, try and get them in the chat or raise your hand now.
The other thing I will say while you're doing that, I see someone said would appreciate any books and links. So I have, like I said, the Political Speechwriter's Companion, Speechwriter Bible. I love it. Savior. The Little Brown Book of Quotes is amazing. It's like a huge book of quotes from political figures from across spectrums. Just really memorable, really good places to start off with a quote. And then for my Democratic Progressive friends here, the Resistance School, really good. I mean, if I had more time, I would have went into Marshall Ganz's theory of the story of us, a public narrative, powerful stuff. I'll include that link in there as well. You can tell about how you own your story, how you own the story of the moment, how you own our collective shared story.
Before we close out, I wanted to ask a question, and then Sam, I see the question. I just wanted to ask you a specific question for staffers, which is kind of going to, I guess, dovetail with the question after this one. But for some of our legislators that do have staffers, what would you recommend to them for writing speeches for their members? What are some things that they should pay attention to?
For staff, you mean? Or for who don't have staff?
For staffers.
Got it. Well, so I think that as a staffer, to write effectively for someone, you have to know that you're writing for a person and you just have ideas. I mean, like the way that Elizabeth and I work together is so collaborative. I mean, sometimes I'll come in and I'll have a very strong idea. She's like, oh, she always makes everything so much better. I swear to God, I'm not even killing you. Like, it blows my mind. Like, I'm good at the job. I like it, but she just, and she will fold an argument in a way that just makes you like, how did I not think of that? She's great. But I don't get wed to what my original draft is to her, because I know she's gonna have changes, and they're gonna be more personal to her, right? I think in the convention speech, like a lot of the color around like the plans and here's why that matters, and these plans are close to my heart, but they like all of that's like her, right? There's so much of it. If you do your job right as a speechwriter, it is there. The most of it comes from the principal, whether you're talking to them and they're telling you what you want, or you know what I mean, and that back and forth. So it's not. I think that the profession has shifted so that it makes it easier for people to say to your boss, hey, I want to talk to you. I want to spend time talking to you so I can understand what your voice is, because I think that people understand now that it's important to have your own voice and not to have ghostwriters. I think as staffers, what you can also do is you can do what, I call interview time, or just talk to them about their life, get those stories from them. Before you write something for them, if you haven't been there for a while, do the courtesy of asking them, hey, here's what I was thinking. What are your thoughts? And then let them, tell you what they're thinking, and then go write what they're thinking if they feel strongly about it. And just if they have books, if they have the way they write, look at everything, the way they text, the email, all that cadence will help you, to get the voice of a principal. And then, does EW write any of her own speeches? Oh yeah. A lot. I mean, I'll say she's great. I mean, not just the speeches, the plans too. People will be so surprised how much of her hand was in all this stuff, and continue to be.
And just two more short questions before we wrap up. These will be the last two. Are there any online trainings, lectures, etc., that you recommend to look at around speech writing as well?
Simon Lancaster, his TED Talk on public speaking is amazing. The Resistance School has a lot of really good, compelling public speaking tactics and advice. And I can think of some more, but those are the two that come to the top of mind.
And then a last one. Since I don't like public speaking and always come up short on my speaking time, how do I make my speeches longer and more interesting?
Tell a story. Tell a story, and then use stats and figures. I'm not saying quote, the 18% of Americans no longer trust the government. Actually, that's a really good one. And then you can talk about why, and then tell a story about why they don't trust government. That's a good one. But yeah, tell a story, and tell a story that, now don't get up there and bore people to death with the story. Let your story have twists and turns and have a moral of the story. But if you want to add some, I needed some more time for a convention, so AMPI it is. The New York City speech in last year in September. We built so much of that out just by talking about the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory and just literally describing what happened in 1918 or 12, whenever. Talking about walking through the steps of the story. Like, there was a fire, right? What happened with the fire? How the fire went up the building? What happened? It went to the walls. The walls caught on fire. The floors caught on fire. The people, the women who were young immigrants, like, just describing the story. They were out on the ledge, and their bodies, they jumped and their bodies hit the floor like a thud. That kind of thing, right? To illustrate the urgency of the moment and give it that vivid detail. So then when you go talk about the importance of regulations, people aren't thinking about regulations. They're thinking about not having someone jump from a window because, the oil barons want to get over on the people. Corruption's been around forever. So yeah, tell a story.
Great. I think it's all of the questions.
Great.
Jen, thank you, Chris. Jen, did you want to wrap up?
Absolutely. Again, I just want to thank you, Chris, for getting on with us. As we've been doing these webinars all summer, essentially, what we've really been committed to doing is helping our legislators maneuver this really weird and kind of untraversed terrain that we've been in. And I'm just so thankful that we've been able to work with individuals like yourself that have empowered us to kind of rebound and continue on with our programming. So I really thank you so much for being on with us. I also want to thank all of the legislators and staffers that are on with us today. I hope you enjoyed this webinar as much as I did. Please let your colleagues know that we are providing this kind of training for legislators and staffers because we want to see you succeed. Even now when it's really hard to get out of bed or legislate at all, because again, like Chris said, people are losing
faith in government, we want to stay here committed to making sure that you all are successful and thriving. We will be bringing you another webinar within a couple of weeks with one of our partners, Facebook, on election protection and misinformation. So please be on the lookout for that. And again, if you would like to be able to review the webinar and all of the other webinars that we've done from the spring and the summer, please sign up to be a member with Will. Again, that will provide you with all the access to the resources that we've been putting together. Again, thank you again for being on with us today, and I hope you all have a great day. Sam, do you have anything that you want to provide? All right, Chris.
Make sure y'all ask Facebook really hard questions. That's all I'm saying.
Everybody always asks Facebook really hard questions.
It's dangerous.
Which is why we are happy to have them as a partner because they always answer.
They will answer you. They certainly will.
So thank you so much.
Okay, take care.